Welcome back. I'm so glad you're here. And this is the week. This is the week we get to talk about the good stuff. I hope you've been following. If you haven't, and this is the first time you've come in, you're coming in midstream in the series Weight Loss Going Deeper. And we're talking about this block of classes is about what should I eat? So this week, we're talking about everybody's favorite. Talking about carbs. You see stars and sunlight and rainbows. Yeah, we love our carbs, right? We love them and we hate them because the diet industry right now, anyway, it used to be that the villain was fat and now the villain is carbs. And so everything's low carb this, keto that. And, last video I talked about, what can you do? What is your long-term plan? What's your sustainable eating plan? And it doesn't have to be keto. It doesn't have to be low carb. But I wanted to talk about carbs because carbs can be part of a healthy weight loss program and they can totally hijack your weight loss. And some of it has to do with which carbs are you choosing. So let's get into that a little bit. There's different kinds of foods that have different amounts of carbohydrates in it. Now, carbohydrates are things like sugar. That's a simple carbohydrate. Then there's more complex carbohydrates, things that are starchy, like rice and potatoes and bread. And then you get other sorts of things that have different kinds of foods that have lower amounts of carbohydrates. And that's things like vegetables. And you're like, yeah, but isn't a potato a vegetable? Yeah, a carrot is a vegetable. The root vegetables tend to be higher in carbohydrates, more starch, more sugar content. So more carbohydrate in the percentage in that food. Whereas if you get into the low carb foods, you're going to get into things like broccoli, kale, spinach, more of the greens and the non-starchy veggies. Now, here's where it gets tricky, okay? There's whole food carbohydrates, and then there's processed food carbohydrates. This is where I think a lot of people get into trouble on their plan. If you're doing mostly whole foods and you're doing things that have single ingredient items, like you pick up a bunch of broccoli or a bag of spinach, it's just one thing. Those are going to be whole foods. If you get something that's in a box or a package, most of those things are going to be processed foods. So the easy way to separate it out is going to be anything with flour. And I've said this before, I'm going to say it again. Anything with any kind of flour, I don't care what kind. Chickpea flour, almond flour, you can get lower carb for sure, but it's still a flour. Wheat flour, rice flour, all of those, sorghum flour, all those flours are processed. They have to go from their whole food state and move into being processed to become the flour. Why does that matter? Because anything that's processed, the more it's processed, the more it's changed from its original state, the faster the processing actually happens in your body and the easier it is to store it. So you have to be careful. I know it's tempting to, oh, well, I'll eat the almond flour crackers and they're lower carb. And so you have to just be careful of those. I'm not saying you can't have them, but you need to be aware that that processing acts differently in your body than if you had a handful of almonds instead. So think about it when you're making your plan and how you're going to incorporate carbohydrates. Why does it matter? So, listen, I want to make sure that, I'm going to come back to this. The next video series is going to be all about hormones around weight loss and, what the different foods do in our bodies, because that helps a lot when you start thinking about, well, why does this food act against or slow down my weight loss versus the others? But I will tell you, if you do a lot of carbohydrates, they tend to be more easily stored in your body. I'm not saying you can't have any. If you are eating a whole foods, plant-based diet, and you're eating almost all plants, it's very, very hard, especially if you're not eating any processed stuff, to get all of your calories without going into any of the starchy vegetables. You can do it. You can do it, but it's tricky. So you might have a sweet potato. You might have a little bit of a regular potato, but you might have some brown rice, but you want to watch those foods that are more starchy and limit the amount, because if you do a lot, if you base your diet around those foods, the higher starch foods, the more sugar-based foods, things that become eventually sugar in your body, they're more likely to get stored, especially as we get older. I can attest, it is easier when you're in your 20s or your 30s to metabolize through the carbs faster. Not as easy you get into the 40s and beyond. So yes, you can have them, but you're going to have to fiddle with the amounts and see really, how does this work for me? And if I had, a half a cup of rice, nothing's happening with my weight loss, and maybe I need to decrease it. It may be I don't need to have white rice anymore. I don't even eat white rice anymore. It's just all the fiber is gone. It turns to sugar immediately in your blood. It doesn't work for me. So you're going to have to do that kind of testing on yourself. But if you want to start with a guideline, you probably want to veer away from too much potatoes, pastas made out of flour, rice, bread. I know. Don't throw the tomatoes. I know. I love bread. But it just, for the goal here, it's just not a regular thing. Okay? All right. So that's carbs. And I know everybody's not going to like what I just said, because it's not fun. We like our carbs. Almost all comfort food. If you think about it, the things you go to when you want to use food as something other than fuel, they're carbs. You feel like something bad happened and you want to just curl up on the couch and have a snack and console yourself, you're not really going for a bunch of broccoli. I mean, unless broccoli is your favorite food, that's really not usually the go-to. It's chips, it's ice cream, cookies, carbs. So anyway, there it is. Subscribe so you don't miss any more, okay? And keep up. And I will see you next time. We're going to be talking about protein, especially for those of you who like to eat plant-based. What do we do about protein? All right. I'll see you next time. Thanks for being here. Bye.